Fellow Spartans, how you doing and welcome back. So here it is, actual gameplay footage of the campaign map for Total War Warhammer. This is excellent stuff, ladies and gentlemen, as we were teased it last week with the in-engine trailer, but this is the real deal in all its splendour and vibrancy, and wow, doesn't it look spectacular. Now apologies, my video is a little late in coming out to you. It's just been a pretty manic few days with certain bits and bobs like my Age of Charlemagne campaign and other YouTube related things, and also because there is so much that has been shown to us in this reveal. I wanted to sit down, take a step back, digest it all, and then come back to you with a more thorough discussion, because I was contemplating doing it live, but then I thought against it as it could come across, rushed, which of course I didn't want to do. So get yourself comfy, guys, grab a drink, get some snacks, because there is going to be a lot of stuff that I'm going to be covering here today. So what you can see right now is actual B-roll footage that Creative Assembly very kindly sent over to me to showcase to you all. But in a moment we'll then go through and break down the trailer itself. So I've actually known this reveal was coming for a while now, and I was so excited to be able to share this footage to you guys, because I saw the campaign map a few weeks ago when I went down to the studios for the Mod Awards, and it most definitely lived up to everything I had hoped for, and more in fact. And of course, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. I'd love to hear them as always. Now, given the huge diversity associated with the Warhammer universe that of course we all know about anyway, anticipation was understandably high for this unveiling, because I've stated previously the community have always been very endearing towards the campaign map in any Total War, and in a lot of ways it's seen as the heart and soul of the game. So CA were kind of expected to deliver with this and give us something we've never seen before, and essentially give us the best representation of the old world, keeping it as true as possible to the Warhammer lore. And for the most part they have delivered with flying colours. Now the game is still in alpha stage, and so of course subject to change from now until the final build in April 2016 hopefully, but I really do hope things are going to go in the right direction and we don't see any step back from what we have been shown so far. So now let's switch over to the footage that they released and have an in-depth look at what was shown to us in the video. Okay, so the first thing which we saw was the map overview of the central part of the old world, covering all the regions which will be in the game. And the developers mentioned when we saw this a few weeks ago that when the next two expansions are released down the line, these games and their maps will connect up to create one vast playable campaign, and still at the same time each game will be treated as separate, allowing people to buy them individually and therefore play them as standalone titles as well. Now I have to say I was particularly impressed with the art style and design work of this overview map, as it reminded me very much of the Tolkien-esque style that he created in his maps for the Lord of the Rings novels, doing a great job of making the fantasy world come to life, and this is very much the same. So we are shown the key areas of the old world map in this walkthrough, and you can see to the south we have the Badlands, where a number of the greenskin tribes dwell. In the east, the World's Edge Mountains of the Dwarves, with other Dwarven clans based to the west within the Grey Mountains. Then moving towards the centre we have the Empire and the much speculated vampire counts. In the far west we have the vibrant lands of Bretonnia, and to the harsh, unforgiving north we have Norska and the Chaos Wasteland to the northeast. Now this takes us to a turn of the Greenskin campaign, where we will get to see a lot of the campaign mechanics for the game, but ones that are also specific to the Greenskin faction, to really show us that aggressive playstyle that they embrace. And that's what I feel they are trying to offer us, that each faction will give us a very rich and unique experience depending on who you play as. Now in a way I guess that is to cater for all the different player types that are out there in the community. Now if you notice in the bottom right corner of the map it states the number 89, which is what the turn number is for this campaign, so it's quite an established playthrough, and so would expect it to be fairly different from this when the player starts off, with units and buildings not being as developed, also technology and skill trees not as far advanced, etc. Now the developers confirmed that the turns aren't going to be years or months, and so instead, as you can see, merely numbers, with campaigns not having any real end turn or date. So they can go on for as long as you want, and legendary lords can't die and are merely wounded, returning after a few turns of recovery. So as the camera spans across the map, you really get a sense of the beauty, diversity, and how full of life the world itself is. The level of detail is exceptional. And you can see there in the sea is a dwarven ironclad ship, which is pretty damn cool. And we had confirmation that the sea battles will just be auto-resolved in Warhammer, which, to be honest with you, I'm not too fussed about. Also, I thought the vast array of sounds were fantastic from what I heard on the video, and really help to immerse you into the game, and it made it feel very atmospheric. And it seems that the campaign map has a very different art style to what we've seen before, with the varying environments transitioning beautifully as you move around. So the first key point we get to on the campaign map is Karak Kadrin, a dwarf stronghold under siege by the Greenskins under the command of Muzg the Astute. There is a lot we get to see on this part of the video. What caught my eye straight away is the dragon, ladies and gentlemen, to the left of the screen, something that people were hyped about seeing from the start when we first saw the announcement video earlier this year. And for me, one of the key ingredients to any fantasy story is a bloody great big dragon. Now I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that dragon is part of the Vampire Count faction going by the banner and what appears to be Manfred von Karstein riding, who is one of the von Karstein vampire counts. But either way, I can't wait to experience more of these beasts on both the campaign and battle map. They look absolutely awesome. Now moving on, we see the character's skills have been broken down into 3 areas: campaign, battle and character skills, but we'll go into that in a little bit more detail when we look at the Lord's skill tree in a short while. A nice addition is the magical items which legendary lords collect after winning battles, which in the case of Muzd is the armour of Gork and the battle axe of the Last War, which will then add some handy buffs to their statistics, and they can have up to 6 per legendary lord, and I believe they will then be visually represented on the character models themselves, which makes me hope that if units upgrade their armour and weaponry over time, then this may be shown to us visually as well on the battle map, much like Medieval 2 if you remember. As you can see, this battle is completely one-sided and it's going to be an easy victory for the Greenskins. However, a nice new feature which I think comes from the tabletop is unit banners, which again are won from previous battles and can be assigned to single units to buff their abilities. And I'm not too sure, however, if these can be used just once or on multiple occasions. And after the battle was finished, you now have these little pop-ups which summarise certain bits of information, which then show you what has just incurred from the conflict, i.e. the outcome of the battle, loot gained, XP gained for your general, and any other special loot acquired. And although some may say that this feels a bit arcadey, I quite like it because it makes important information and details more accessible straight away and clearer, so you don't miss anything by mistake. All the standard options, as you would expect, are there to the player once you've captured the settlement, and I would like to know, however, if the raise feature is mirrored exactly to Attila's, or will it be changed in any way with different effects incurring from this action, and will it be a feature just available to the factions such as the Greenskins and Chaos, or for everyone? I did love how the settlement is then completely converted to the culture of the Battle of Victors, with the architecture of the Greenskins very clear to see on that once dwarven Karak. And I'm sure that feature will as well then filter down to the battles themselves, much like what we saw in the ambush at the Thundering Falls. After that, we move south into the Badlands to a province completely owned by the Greenskins called Death Pass, to take a look at the building management side of the Warhammer campaign and how this will work for the Greenskins. Now, they have designed a unique and very faction specific look to the building cards, with each different type of building chain colour coded, which is a nice touch. However, we may find that people could possibly struggle in differentiating what building is what with the greenskins, as the icons aren't visually obvious. I feel they kind of look the same, because apart from the colours, that there is nothing clearly that shows for me what type of building it actually is. What will help though is that they have implemented, when you hover over the buildings, the actual building chain will now appear, so you can clearly see from that what upgrades will be available, and so this will offer you some assistance, I feel. The building browser, however, is really well designed, and again that colour segmentation between building types is really clear and will easily help us distinguish what is what. So as you can see, it's segmented into province capital, military recruitment, military support, defence and infrastructure. What is really good is that with the buildings in the military sections, they display little unit cards of what the building will unlock once constructed, so that is very streamlined and makes the management of your cities a lot sleeker. And while we're on the browser screen, you can see various Total War features familiar to players in the past, which have been given, shall we say, a little Warhammer makeover for this game. So obedience, I would imagine, is public order in your region, extort income is tax, and then corruption is kind of like religion in historical games, I guess. With two types being in the game, there's chaos and vampiric corruption, which we'll see in action in a little bit. I assume as well the corruption mechanic must be what religion is like in historic games, with the element that people could convert to it and therefore cause unrest and ultimately rebellions. Also, the population surplus feature remains, which some may not like, as people have stated in the past that they like an actual number for their population which they can relate to, as opposed to levels, and I get that as well. It's something I liked and felt that before, population had more of a direct impact in what you did within that city, even to the level of it determining how many units you will be able to recruit at that given time. But alas, in this game, it's like Rome 2, it's like Attila, they do have the population surplus feature remaining. So again, tech trees will be very faction specific to the player, with the greenskins obviously going for military improvements, weapons and siege equipment upgrades, basically war as you would expect, whereas other factions will be more balanced with a wider variety of military and civic categories, and even some buildings for the Empire having to be constructed in order for certain technologies to be then unlocked. And with the greenskins, the more advanced units which have been on display in the showcase battles which we've seen so far, like the Arachnorak Spiders and Doom Divers, well, as you can see, they aren't going to be given to you on a plate, with them being on the last tier that is researched in the Goblin Workshop. So you can see Creative Assembly, as they have mentioned previously, really are going for as much depth as they can with all the factions that are going to be playable on the game. So as I mentioned earlier, we'll now take a look at what has been altered with the skill trees for your faction's characters, and I feel these have been improved greatly. So the lords now have 3 core skill trees to improve, with them being campaign, battle and character skills. So the magical items unlocked during battles and then used by your characters give them specific skill trees which can be leveled up to improve certain areas of their stats. There is now up to 30 skill levels for your characters, which is a lot deeper and more expansive than any of the previous games we've had. It's also here where you can unlock quest chains, which are again different and unique for each legendary lord on the game. And these, as I'm sure you'll be aware of already, are story-driven missions which you partake in order to acquire a great legendary item at the end of them, which are based on the tabletop games. Also, mounts can be unlocked here as well, which, as we see here, is Skullmuncher for Azog, his personal wyvern, which looks pretty damn menacing. I guess the dragon we saw earlier on was the same principle, but for a vampire count. And I feel that all this very firmly gives us that sense of an RPG element coming into Total War, that these characters are unique and you could get attached to them again, like you could probably most so in Medieval 2, and you want to improve them and see them do well in your campaign. It makes it that you have to and essentially want to choose your lord's skills carefully and really think about what you want from them in the campaign. So again, they are doing a very good job of bringing that role-playing mechanic of the tabletop across to this game. What we then went on to see was the underway mechanic in action, which until now I thought was only going to be available to the Dwarven faction, but then the Greenskins will now have this ability too, and I guess looking back at it makes sense really. So Clubber Spitebacker is sandwiched between two Dwarven armies, and in normal circumstances would have to fight them to get out of that situation, but now he can activate the underway stance, which effectively doubles his movement range, and so he and his army are able to come through the other side of the volcano unscathed. It will be interesting to see how much we will have to use this in a campaign, basically, because I feel, how many times will you be in this situation like this, and you'll have to use that mechanic? I don't feel it will be that many, but maybe I'm wrong, who knows, but we'll find out. Now, there is two skills that characters have the possibility of obtaining and ranking up, called Interception and Evasion, and so as their names suggest, the higher these are, the better chance your lords have got of either intercepting armies that are in an underway stance, which would then initiate an underground ambush battle, like the one we had at Thundering Falls, or a higher chance of evading enemy armies and essentially avoiding battles of that nature ever being initiated. One of the Greenskin campaign features that I really like the sound of is the army stance of Raiding Camp. So as we can see here at the Pillar of Bone, which by the way, if you don't know, is a landmark on the map, which is a kind of epicenter for the winds of magic, and will have a big effect on the amount of mana available to spellcasters during battles which are fought in this area. Well, there's a legendary lord here, or I think it's just a lord actually, that goes by the name of Grom Bogroth, who is suffering pretty badly with his army's fightiness, which is one of the Greenskins' key campaign aspects in Warhammer. So given the nature of these guys, they want to be fighting and be at war essentially all the time, and so the success of this is measured in fightiness. So the more battles you fight, the higher it is. This could be compared in a way to Army's integrity in Attila, for example, and it essentially has 3 tiers. And if an army hits the lower third, it goes into a state called quarrelsome and can cause you a lot of bother, with your army suffering from animosity, causing them to potentially rebel and start to lose numbers. So a raiding camp stance will help increase their fightiness again, but at the same time give the army and your faction a number of benefits with increased income, unit replenishment, and access to which I do see as a huge plus to the Greenskins is the global recruitment pool. So essentially it will allow you to recruit any unit into your army that is available across your lands. However, it will be more expensive than normal and takes longer to recruit them, but this will allow you to constantly be pushing your armies forward into battle, taking over more settlements and killing more of the enemy. And these guys, you can see right now, are definitely suited for someone like Legend of Total War to play as them, constantly attacking, constantly at war basically. That is what he would love. So at the other end of the spectrum, the video then focuses on Grimgor Ironhide, and his fightiness is at the highest of the highest level possible. So when you hit the top third of the fightiness meter, your army goes into a state of war, giving you a huge buff in the form of a whole new army which is controlled via the AI. So essentially like a free client state army that you can then set war targets with. And the whole of the time you're in this state of war, the supporting force will remain within your faction. And of course, the moment you leave that threshold, the army you had supporting will disperse. But either way, that's a great bonus to have and really affirms how aggressive this faction is within Warhammer. And they are, Creative Assembly that is, giving us as many tools as possible to achieve total war with them, I feel. It would be interesting as well if the achievement is in place on the game to do a This is Total War playthrough when you declare war straight away on every faction you encounter. That's if you're not at war with everyone automatically, given the nature of the who these guys are. And on that subject, actually, diplomacy wasn't shown to us when we were down at their studios, or is it in this video? So hopefully we will get to see how that plays out soon, as there is some speculation surrounding how that mechanic will work in Warhammer. Next, we get to see a bit more of how the heroes and agents will play out in the game, with this orc shaman performing one of his agent actions called magical interference. And though it wasn't shown to us, I hope and I feel it probably will be the case that heroes will have to better their skill tree and increase their ability before being able to access more actions to perform. And given the RPG element and character customization features that we've seen so far, I'm sure this will have been worked on for the game. So magical interference basically sucks the winds of magic out of the air to reduce its level down in the region, and so this could be really handy if you can see an enemy army coming towards you to attack, and they have within their forces sort of celestial wizards, for example, who will be able to perform devastating magical spells. Their abilities, of course, would then be affected greatly by your shaman, and so I would assume reduce the mana pool down for the enemy in battle. And I'm not sure if that would increase yours, considering he's sucking the magic out of the air and essentially towards him. I don't know that is the case, but I can only assume that would be the the feature within that. And maybe agents could start to work in partnership a lot more in Warhammer, with spies, for example, infiltrating enemy armies to see who is within them, and then shamans performing actions like we see here to hinder them in some way. And what I would love to see is clips being played again every time an agent performs an action, like in the previous titles gone by. A lot of the community love them, and I for one would really like to see them back in the games. We then saw how heroes now count towards an actual unit in your army, because as confirmed already, agents are for the first time controllable on the battlefield. So previously in Total War games gone by, where you would attach an agent to a full 20 stack army, you can't do that anymore, and as is shown here when the shaman joins Grimgor's force to make the numbers go from 19 to 20 units. And there you can see by joining the army, he will increase the chance of magical items being dropped for the army's lord to then pick up and utilise going forward, which is a nice little feature there. So the final feature we get to see is how quest battles are initiated on the campaign map once they have been activated in the Legendary Lord's skill trees, which we saw previously. So the quest chains will take you to various locations around the campaign map, and these will be highlighted by these blue floating markers. And as shown here, you can see that the final battle within the quest chain itself will reward the player if they are successful with a legendary item unique to that lord. And in Grimgor's case, or his quest, he will acquire Gitsnik, which is his famous axe. But first he has to defeat, by the looks of things, a prerequisite army which is designed for each quest chain, I believe. In this case it's quite a powerful Empire force with a good selection of troops and includes a deadly steam tank. And I do like the sound of these quest battles, as they seem to have a sense of adventure to them, where you have to travel to specific battles and locations in order to achieve your victory and essentially ultimate prize, and that story driven RPG element being evident once again. Some people have been saying, from what I've read, is that unfortunately the legendary items don't seem to be that legendary at the moment, if you know what I mean, in the sense that their level of buffs don't match up to the legendary status of that item. I mean, I'm not knowledgeable enough in the lore to comment on that, but they seem to be pretty strong to me. But do let me know down below if you think otherwise. So the campaign showcase video then concludes with a fly-through of some of the lands within the old world, and we'll stop at a couple of places along the way just to discuss some things that we are shown. And as you can see, we go over some of the beautiful landscape of Reichland, the heart of the Empire, and there is Cole Franz on Deathclaw, and this is my sort of territory, a land of chivalry and where orders of knights dwell. This just suits me perfectly, much more than the grim Badlands in the south. And I love how the sense of elevation in the terrain is really emphasised on this map. You can really see the difference in the high mountain peaks and the flat plains of the lands there, especially around the area of the World's Edge Mountains. It looks so impressive, it really does. Now we move into the scenic area of Bretonnia. This is situated on the west coast of the old world, and the look and feel of this area of the map is fantastic. But we shall just stop here for a second, because as you can see, there is a vampire count who has started to bring death and destruction by the looks of things to the Bretonian lands. Now I said earlier there is two types of corruption in the game, chaos and vampiric, and it looks like this is the result or area of effect of his corruption being spread across the surrounding land. This must be some kind of stance that he can be put into, I would assume, but it reminds me a lot of the devastation effect that you had in Rome 1 and Medieval 2, if you remember, after enemy armies had laid siege to your city for a number of turns. I hope that the greens, though, and the life of the land does return in time once a vampire count has left. I should hope it does. I would assume that while he is there, though, it would cause some high negative debuffs to the region, like public order loss and an income drop as well. Then as we move north, we catch a glimpse of the Bretonian king, Lewin Leoncoeur, with a beautiful looking castle in the background. Now I really do hope in the future, and I kind of think this will be a given, that Bretonnia will be a faction given to us in a DLC. Yeah, I know it's a bit of a sore subject, but I'm sure these guys will be available to us at some point. It's kind of a shame they're not playable in the full game already, as I would love to play as these guys in a campaign, just because of the chivalric, knightly and feudal feel they have to them, almost Arthurian in some ways, as they are a faction who believe in noble quests and even have Knights of the Grail, kind of like, medieval crusades in some ways. But yeah, absolutely, would love to play as these in a future campaign on my channel at some point. Hopefully that will be the case. Now finally we move over the cold and not so pleasant lands to the north in Norska, and the Chaos Wastes as well, not a nice place you want to be going. This again showing the diversity of the campaign world and the high amount of differing environments within the lands you explore. Then as we go back over the World's Edge Mountains again, we get that great impression once more of the elevation of terrain that is apparent on this quite frankly stunning campaign map, and I absolutely believe this is their best to date. But all of this is pointless if the performance isn't there, so I do hope that optimization is still as high on their list of priorities as everything else. When I spoke to one of the game designers, Richard Aldridge, earlier this year, he did say that they are trying as hard as possible to tailor the game for all levels of computers out there, so even lower end rigs will still be able to enjoy the game as much as the top end ones, but only time will tell. When we see the system requirements come out at some point next year, and we're showcased some more preview footage, hopefully in the near future, and obviously when we get to play it ourselves. That's the real thing, when we get to put it into our computer, install it and try it out with our own specifications. And I will, when the game comes out, be definitely doing a sort of a benchmark video just to show to you what my settings are and how you can tailor it around to try and get the best performance out of the game for your computer. So before I go, I just wanted to go over some points and questions that we got to put to the developers in a sort of a list here I've got while we're there at the studios, and again sort of help clarify a few things to you that I wasn't able to discuss in this video so far. So the winds of magic are higher in certain areas of the campaign map, and I believe they are sort of dynamic, a bit like fertility in Attila. Attila had that thing where fertility would change in certain areas, it would get lower in the north, etc. And so that's the same with winds of magic, it can change in various parts of the world throughout the campaign sort of walkthrough basically. There's no seasons, that's not at all in the game. There's no sense of time or age, as I said to you before, so the characters don't age at all. Resources are apparent, so we could see that I think near the beginning with Karak Kadrin. There's a sort of, I think I saw like a beer keg icon on the name of their settlement there, so it does suggest that they're producing some sort of beer as a tradable goods. So yeah, you can trade on the game and resources are available. There's no siege escalation, which is unfortunate, because it'd be great to see like a crack under siege for a few turns and then attack it and it has like some of the walls taken down and things like that, but unfortunately there's no siege escalation at all, which is a shame. I believe there is no army limits though to your faction, so you can have as many armies as you want, because I don't obviously think there'll be Imperium or anything like that in the game, so you can have as many armies as you want. Mercenaries will be limited in the campaign, because I think in terms of the Warhammer tabletop and the Warhammer lore, there's not many mercenaries around in the old world, I don't think, so that's not going to be something you'll see a lot of. Each faction will have unique sort of equipment and siege equipment to it, I believe, so that's quite good. So settlement growth will be upwards and not outwards as previous games, and what I mean by that is when you obviously increase your tiers of cities in other games, obviously they expand outwards, the walls get larger and expand across the land, but in the case of Warhammer they'll go upwards as opposed to outwards, so that's what we'll see more in Warhammer. Diplomacy, even though we don't know much of it yet, will be open to every faction, even though some factions like the Dwarves and the Greenskins won't really talk. It is a sandbox game at the end of the day, so it is possible. So diplomacy is very open between all the factions apparently. I don't know how that will work with Chaos yet, but obviously there'll be something in there, I'm sure. As well, when you select a legendary lord at the start of your campaign, the one you didn't select, the non-selected legendary lord, will still appear at some point in your campaign. So that's quite good. They'll still, have a part to play in your story in some ways. And factions can only take certain regions, I believe. I don't know how this is going to play out. This could be difficult, I feel, because the example would be like an Empire army couldn't go down to an Orc stronghold in the Badlands and take it and then occupy it, essentially. You could only loot it, raise it, I should imagine, and that's it. Because you wouldn't think, in a way, would you, in the Warhammer universe, you wouldn't get an Empire army going down and settling down in the Badlands, would you? It just wouldn't really be logical. So that's coming across in the game as well. But in terms of mechanics, will that limit us? Will it limit the AI and what they can do? I'm not too sure yet, but that was apparently told to us will be the case. And finally, sort of landmarks. We've seen that landmarks are going to be dotted around the map. We had the Pillar of Bone we saw earlier on. I don't know what the landmarks are going to be, but will they be in the actual battle maps? We didn't get that confirmed, I don't think, unless I misheard it at the time, but I don't know if landmarks will be on the battle map yet. Obviously on the campaign map, but will they be on the battle map? I'm not too sure yet. So there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. Wow, we've covered a lot of stuff today, but there has been a lot of information which has been revealed to us in the last few days. I hope you've enjoyed the video though, and you've got some benefit out of it. And if you did, spear that like button. Your support, as always, is so much appreciated, so thank you very much, guys. But yeah, I'm so impressed with what I've seen. The potential of the game and the new direction it's taking is extremely exciting, and I can't wait to see more specific faction features from the other races in the future and their campaign, especially the vampire counts, now that we've been teased them in this video. And all in all, just more reveals about the game in general, and I really hope that it lives up to the expectation, because there is so much that this has got in terms of potential to be one of their finest games, but only time will tell. And of course, anything you want to share with me about the video, then please do comment down below. It'd be great to hear from you as always. But thanks for watching, and until next time, this is Warrior Spotter for now saying farewell.